The California sun hammered down on Camp Pendleton's Range 214 like a judgment. Heat shimmers rose from the concrete firing line, distorting the steel targets that dotted the desert floor at intervals stretching to 1,600 meters. The advanced marksmanship complex was deserted except for 6 men and 1 woman nobody was taking seriously. Chief Petty Officer Jake Brennan centered his breathing, his cheek pressed against the stock of the M24 sniper weapon system. Through the Leupold Mark IV scope, the world compressed to a single point, an 18-inch steel circle at 1,200 meters. He'd been at this for 40 minutes. 4 shots, 0 hits. "You're rushing the trigger press," someone said from behind him. Jake's jaw tightened. He didn't need advice from the supply clerk, especially not her. Specialist Sarah Lockhart stood 15 feet back from the firing line, a tablet computer tucked under one arm. Her ACU uniform crisp despite the heat. She looked impossibly young, 21 according to her personnel file, which Jake had checked after she'd shown up at the range with equipment requisition forms. Brown hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Wide hazel eyes that didn't match the rest of her. Something in those eyes was old. The other SEALs from Team 6 lounged in whatever shade they could find. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Diaz chuckled from his position against the observation tower. "She's giving you pointers, Chief. The logistics specialist thinks you need shooting tips." "She's only 21, Lieutenant Hayes added, not looking up from his phone. "Probably never fired anything bigger than a 9mm in basic." Sarah's expression didn't change. That was what made Jake the most uncomfortable. No embarrassment, no anger, just stillness. He returned to his scope. The reticle drifted across the target in lazy circles. Wind from the southwest at 8 miles per hour, according to the Kestrel 5700 weather meter. Temperature 94 degrees. Density altitude complications. He'd accounted for all of it. Jake sent the shot. Through the spotting scope, Petty Officer Second Class Gator, Michaels tracked the trace. Mississippi left maybe 2 feet. Low by 3. God damn it. Jake worked the bolt. The empty 7.62 by 51 millimeters NATO casing, ejecting with metallic clink against concrete. "The rifle's off," Sarah said. She hadn't moved. 3 MOA horizontal, 1.5 vertical. It's been logged in the armory maintenance records for 2 weeks. Jake sat up from his shooting position. Sweat stung his eyes. "If the rifle's off, why didn't you pull it from circulation?" "I did. Yesterday. You checked it out again this morning." Sarah's voice was quiet, factual. "Override signature from a range OIC." Lieutenant Hayes finally looked up. "You're saying a SEAL Team 6 operator can't qualify because of equipment malfunction, but supply clerk spotted it." "I'm saying the rifle has a documented offset. It's not a secret. It's in the system." "Then why didn't the system flag it when I checked it out?" Jake pushed himself to his feet, bones cracking. 37 years old and feeling every day of it. 16 years in naval special warfare. He'd made shots in Ramadi that nobody believed until they saw the body. Now he couldn't hit steel in peacetime California. Sarah finally moved. She walked forward 3 steps, still maintaining respectful distance from the firing line, because someone overrode the flag. The rifle was supposed to go to Anderson Army Depot for evaluation. Someone wanted it to stay in circulation. The words hung in the air like cordite. Diaz straightened. "That's a pretty serious accusation, Specialist." "It's not an accusation. It's data." Sarah tapped her tablet. M24 serial number 2847 Alpha 6, manufactured 2003, barreled action by Remington 700, HS precision stock, last depot maintenance April 2019, documented accuracy degradation, reported September 2023, flag for removal October 2023. Override authorization November 14th, 2023. Checked out 17 times since then. Qualification failure rate 63%. Jake stared at her. The numbers came out like a machine gun burst. No hesitation. No checking notes. "You memorized all that?" Gator asked. "I don't have to memorize it. I process every weapon maintenance request for this complex." Sarah met Jake's eyes for the first time. "You're the 9th SEAL who's failed qualification with that specific rifle. Most assume they're having a bad day. They requisition more ammo and try again. Nobody questions a weapon." Hayes stood, his phone forgotten. Why would someone keep a faulty rifle in rotation? That's the question. Sarah turned to leave. Hold up. Jake's voice carried command. Old habit. You seem to know a lot about this rifle. You ever fire one? Sarah stopped. Her shoulders tensed, just slightly. When she turned back, her face was carefully neutral. I'm a 92Y supply specialist, Chief. I inventory equipment. I don't use it. That's not what I asked. If that opening hooked you, trust me, this story only gets better. Subscribe now for more real stories of courage and precision, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Now, let me show you what happened when Sarah Lockhart stopped hiding. The silence stretched. Somewhere across the range, a flag snapped in the wind. The steel targets wavered in the heat. Diaz grinned. I think the chief just called you out, specialist. You talk a big game about offset compensation and MOA drift. Let's see if you can walk it. I should get back to supply, Sarah said. You should take a shot, Jake heard himself say. He wasn't sure why he was pushing. Maybe because of those eyes. Maybe because something in her absolute certainty reminded him of someone he couldn't quite place. If you know so much about this rifle's problems, show us how to compensate. Sarah's hands tightened on the tablet. Chief, I appreciate It wasn't a request. Jake stepped aside from the firing line, gesturing to the M24. One shot. The 1,200-meter target I've been missing. Show me what I'm doing wrong. Hayes laughed. Jake, come on. She's supply, so she keeps reminding us. Jake didn't break eye contact with Sarah. One shot. Then you can go back to counting bullets. Something flickered across Sarah's face. Not anger, calculation. She was weighing options, running probabilities. Finally, she set down her tablet on the equipment table with deliberate care. If I do this, I need it on record that I advise against using this weapon. Her voice was steady. Noted. Jake crossed his arms. Sarah approached the firing line like she was walking to an execution. Her movements were controlled, measured. She knelt behind the M24, but didn't immediately assume a shooting position. Instead, she examined the rifle with the systematic attention of an armorer, checked the scope mounting screws, tested the stock for play, worked the bolt 3 times, listening to mechanical symphony. When's the last time anyone cleaned this? She asked. Gator shrugged. Gets cleaned between qual sessions. Standard procedure. Standard isn't enough for precision work at extended range. Sarah ran her finger along the bolt raceway, examined the residue. Carbon buildup in the chamber throat. Affects pressure. Affects velocity. Affects point of impact. She was stalling, Jake realized. Buying time. The question was why. If she couldn't shoot, this was elaborate theater just to avoid embarrassment. But if she could, Sarah finally settled into position behind the rifle. Her form was textbook. Left hand supporting the stock. Right hand on the pistol grip. Body at a 45-degree angle to the rifle's bore axis. Elbows positioned to create bone support rather than relying on muscle tension. Jake had been doing this for 16 years. He recognized a trained shooter when he saw one. Scope set for my eye relief, he said. You'll need to adjust. I know. Sarah's voice had changed. Quieter. More focused. She made 3 small adjustments to the Leupold Mark IV, each movement precise. You're 6'2". I'm 5'7". Different head position, different sight picture. She pressed her cheek to the stock. Through the spotting scope, Gator watched her settle. Winds shifting. Gator called. Southwest, 9 miles per hour, gusting to 12. Sarah didn't respond. Her breathing had slowed to the point where Jake almost couldn't see her back move. He'd seen that before. Called it combat breathing, the physiological response of slowing your heart rate to stabilize the shot. But Sarah wasn't just slowing. She was almost stopping. She's not even looking through the scope, Diaz muttered. It was true. Sarah's eyes were closed. Her finger rested along the trigger guard, not on the trigger itself. She looked like she was praying. 30 seconds passed. A full minute. Any day now, specialist, Hayes said. Sarah's eyes opened. She acquired the sight picture, made a microscopic adjustment to her cheek weld, let out half a breath, and held. The M24 barked. The suppressor wasn't attached, and the report echoed across the complex like a door slamming in an empty house. The rifle recoiled. Sarah rode it, kept her eye in the scope for follow-through. Hit! Gator's voice carried disbelief. Center mass. Maybe 2 inches high, one left. Dead silence from the SEAL team. Jake walked to the spotting scope, needing to see it himself. Through the Leupold optic, the steel target at 1,200 meters showed a fresh silver impact crater, almost dead center. One shot. First round hit on a target he'd been missing for 40 minutes. Sarah stood, clearing the weapon with practice efficiency. Bolt back, magazine removed, chamber visually inspected. She set the M24 down carefully and picked up her tablet without meeting anyone's eyes. The 3 MOA horizontal offset means you need to hold right edge of target for center mass impact, she said quietly. The 1.5 vertical means you hold top third. Combined with the carbon buildup, adding approximately 40 feet per second to muzzle velocity, you're looking at a half MOA high impact at this range. Wind compensation at 1,200 meters with a 9-mile-per-hour crosswind is roughly 8 inches, so another half MOA hold into the wind. The math isn't complicated if you account for the rifle's actual performance instead of its theoretical performance. Jake found his voice. Where did you learn to shoot like that? I should really get back to supply. Sarah turned to leave. Specialist Lockhart. Jake used his command voice. That was not a request. Where did you learn to shoot? Sarah stopped walking. Her shoulders rose and fell with a breath that looked like it hurt. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. My father taught me. Your father's shooter? You could say that. Hayes stepped forward. What's your father's name, Specialist? The question hung in the desert air. Sarah's knuckles went white around the tablet. Lockhart, Diaz said suddenly. His face had gone pale. Jesus Christ. Lockhart. Jake looked at him. What? Marcus Lockhart. Diaz's voice was hollow. They called him Reaper. The name detonated in Jake's memory, like a flashbang. Marcus Reaper Lockhart, Marine Scout Sniper, the legend who'd made a 2,400-meter shot in Helmand province that was still classified. The ghost who'd operated in Syria during the height of ISIS with confirmed kill count that nobody would speak about on the record. The man who'd disappeared. Jake's eyes snapped to Sarah. You're Reaper's daughter? I need to go. Sarah's voice cracked just slightly. Reaper's dead, Hayes said. Killed in Syria, 2021. IED outside Alisaka. His body was never recovered. Sarah met Hayes' eyes. He's not dead. He's missing. There's a difference. You're tracking him, Jake said, pieces falling into place. That's why you're here. That's why your inventory. Every weapon and optic that moves through this base. Jake's mind raced through the implications. You're not just counting equipment. You're tracking it, following the trail. Sarah's face was stone. I don't know what you're talking about, Chief. Bullshit. Diaz moved closer. I heard stories about Reaper, about his daughter. They said he trained her from the time she could hold a rifle, said she could shoot before she could drive. That you? No response. But the silence was confirmation enough. Jake's training kicked in, the same instinct that had kept him alive through 7 deployments. Something bigger was happening here. The faulty rifle that stayed in circulation. Sarah's presence at the specific range. Her encyclopedic knowledge of equipment movement. This wasn't coincidence. The rifle, Jake said slowly, the override that kept it in service. You wanted to see who would check it out, didn't you? You're using it as bait. Sarah's jaw tightened. For 3 seconds, she didn't move. Then she set down the tablet and turned to face the full SEAL team. November 14th, 2023, she said. Someone with range OIC credentials overrode the flag on that M24 and 4 other weapons scheduled for depot maintenance. December 3rd, 3 Night Force Attica scopes disappeared from the armory here. December 19th, 2 and /PQ, 15 laser designators went missing from 29 palms. January 8th, 4 sets of PVS 31 night vision goggles were signed out for training at Fort Irwin and never returned. January 23rd, a shipment of Schmidt and Bender optics was diverted from Camp Lejeune. February 2nd. Stop. Hayes held up a hand. How do you know all this? Because I cross-reference every equipment discrepancy report in the Marine Corps supply system. Sarah's voice was clinical now, detached. Because I've been tracking theft patterns for 18 months. Because the same precision optics, rangefinders, and thermal equipment that's going missing from U.S. military bases is showing up in Syria in the hands of people who killed 7 Marines in 2021. The weight of that statement settled over the group like fallout. Gator whistled low. That's a serious allegation, specialist. It's not an allegation. It's data. Sarah picked up her tablet, pulled up a file. $47 million in stolen equipment. 89 American deaths with forensic evidence linking back to U.S. military optics and targeting systems. 33 different bases. 117 separate incidents. All connected by a supply chain signature that most people wouldn't notice unless they were specifically looking for it. Jake took the tablet, scrolled through the file. Serial numbers, dates, locations, photographic evidence from combat action reports. It was meticulous, obsessive, the work of someone who'd sacrificed everything else in their life to chase this one truth. And your father? Jake asked quietly. Disappeared during a reconnaissance operation outside Alisaka on March 15th, 2021. Sarah recited it like a serial number. Official report says IED, but his team said he went in to investigate suspected weapons trafficking. When they tried to follow, they got hit by an ambush using American thermoscopes and laser designators. 7 dead. My father missing. No body recovered. Case closed. So you joined the Army as supply clerk. Diaz said, got yourself positioned where you could monitor equipment movement. I joined because nobody else was looking. Sarah's voice hardened. Because the investigation got shut down. Because someone with enough rank to make it disappear made it disappear. And because if I came in as a combat MOS, I'd never get near the supply chain data. Hayes shook his head. This is way above our pay grade. If what you're saying is true, it's true. Sarah took back the tablet. I have 17 months of evidence. Chain of custody documentation. Forensic analysis. Witness statements. Everything. Then take it to CID. Hayes said, Criminal Investigation Division. That's their job. I did. Sarah's laugh was bitter. March 2023. Submitted a complete evidence package. Know what happened? My security clearance got flagged for review. I got ordered to psychological evaluation. The investigating agent told me I was experiencing complicated grief and conspiracy ideation related to my father's death. My evidence package was lost in administrative processing. 2 weeks later, the agent got promoted and transferred to a Pentagon liaison position. Jake felt something cold settle in his gut. He'd been in the Navy long enough to recognize institutional cover-up when he heard about it. Someone's protecting the network. Multiple someones. Sarah pulled up another file. The pattern requires coordination at 5 level minimum, probably higher. It's not one person stealing equipment. It's a network, and they've been doing it for years. Why tell us? Jake asked. You don't know us. For all you know, we're part of it. Sarah met his eyes. Because you've been hitting the range 3 times a week for a month, trying to maintain certification. Because your team has a deployment to Syria scheduled for April. Because you're not part of the network, you're a threat to it. And because I needed to see if you were the kind of operator who'd listen to a 21-year-old supply clerk when she told you your rifle was sabotaged. The pieces clicked. That rifle wasn't randomly kept in service. Someone's trying to make sure SEAL teams can't certify before deployment. 11 special operations personnel have failed qualification in the last 6 weeks using equipment that's been flagged for maintenance, Sarah confirmed. All of them were scheduled for Syria rotations. Someone's degrading our readiness. Diaz swore softly in Spanish. Jake handed back the tablet. His mind was already shifting gears, moving from confusion to operational planning. 16 years in naval special warfare had taught him to recognize when the mission just changed. What do you need from us? Sarah blinked. What? You didn't come here just to warn us. You came because you need something. Jake crossed his arms. So what is it? For the first time since the conversation started, Sarah looked uncertain. Young. Actually 21 instead of whatever ancient thing lived behind those sniper's eyes. The evidence I can prove the thefts. It can prove the pattern. But it can't prove who's running the network. Not with enough certainty to overcome their institutional protection. She took a breath. I need someone to catch them in the act. Someone whose testimony can't be dismissed as a grief-stricken daughter chasing conspiracy theories. You want us to run an operation? Hayes said. Off the books. Using your intelligence. I want you to consider that your deployment to Syria might already be compromised, Sarah corrected. I want you to consider that the equipment you're depending on to keep you alive might have been sabotaged by the same network that killed 7 Marines. And I want you to consider that if we don't shut this down, more people are going to die. Jake studied her. The morning light caught the exhaustion in her face, dark circles under her eyes, the tightness around her mouth that came from too many nights without sleep. How long had she been carrying this alone? 18 months of investigating, documenting, being dismissed and stonewalled and diagnosed as crazy, all while her father was out there. Missing, maybe dead, maybe worse. Show me the rest, Jake said. Sarah hesitated, then unlocked another layer of files on her tablet. This is everything. If I'm wrong about you, this ends my investigation and probably gets me dishonorably discharged. You're not wrong. Jake took the tablet. For the next 20 minutes, Sarah walked him through it. The pattern was elegant and terrifying. Equipment would be flagged for maintenance, then diverted to secondary facilities that didn't actually exist, administrative ghosts in the supply system. From there, the trail went cold in official channels. But Sarah had done what nobody else thought to do. She cross-referenced civilian shipping manifests, tracked serial numbers through gray market dealers, monitored dark web arms trading forums. The stolen equipment was being funneled through a logistics company called Triton Global Solutions. On paper, they provided security consulting services to DoD contractors. In reality, they were a cutout, a shell company that existed to launder military equipment to the highest bidder. Triton's registered in Delaware, operated out an office in Alexandria, Virginia, Sarah explained. CEO is a former Marine colonel named Richard Vance. Retired 2019 after 26 years of service. His military record is impressive. Multiple deployments, Bronze Star, Legion of Merit. He's connected. Friends in Congress. Consulting contracts with defense contractors. Advisory board positions. Gator looked up from a file he was reading. And you think he's running a multi-million-dollar theft operation? I think he's part of it. Maybe the operational commander. Maybe just a facilitator. Sarah pulled up a network diagram. Triton has contracts with 17 different military bases. They provide security assessments and equipment audits. It's the perfect cover. They have legitimate access to armories, supply facilities, maintenance records. They can walk into secure areas without raising suspicion. Jake saw it. And while they're conducting audits, they're identifying high-value equipment, flagging it for maintenance, arranging the diversions. Right. Then the equipment gets routed through Triton's logistics network, sanitized the military markings, and sold to intermediaries. From there it ends up in Syria, Yemen, Libya, anywhere there's a market for American military hardware. Sarah's voice was cold. And American soldiers die because some insurgent has a thermoscope that lets them see in the dark, or a laser designator that makes their shots more accurate. 89 deaths, Diaz said quietly. You said 89 Americans have been killed with equipment from this network. That I can confirm. Probably more. Sarah's hands were steady on the tablet, but Jake could see the tension in her shoulders. After-action reports that mention enemy forces with advanced optics, forensic analysis of recovered equipment, serial numbers that trace back to U.S. military inventory. It's all there if you know what to look for. Hayes leaned against the equipment table. Why Syria specifically? Why do you think your father's connected to this? Because 2 weeks before he disappeared, he sent me an encrypted email. Sarah's voice went quieter. All it said was, they're not buying from Russia. It's ours. If something happens to me, look at Triton. That was it. Last communication I ever got from him. The desert wind picked up, hot and dry. Somewhere in the distance, another range was hot. The rhythmic crack of rifle fire carrying across the complex. Jake made his decision. What's your timeline? When's the next major theft scheduled? Sarah looked up sharply. You're going to help? You made your case. Jake gestured to the tablet. This is a solid intelligence. If even half of it's accurate, we've got a major security breach and American blood on the ground because of it. That's not something I can walk away from. Besides, Diaz added, I knew Reaper. Met him once in Kandahar, 2012. He bought me a beer and told me I held my breath too long before shooting. Changed my whole approach to long-range work. He looked at Sarah. If there's a chance he's still alive, I'm in. Gator nodded. Hayes took longer, but finally, this goes sideways. We're all done. Courts-martial, prison time, dishonorable discharges. You understand that? I understand that 7 Marines are already dead, Sarah said. I understand that my father's been missing for 3 years. I understand that every day this network operates, more American equipment ends up in enemy hands. So yes, I understand the risks. Hayes sighed. Then I'm in, but we do this smart. No cowboy shit. Jake turned back to Sarah. Timeline. There's a major equipment transfer scheduled for next week. 23 sets of thermal optics and /PSQ, 20 enhanced night vision goggle systems, worth about $3 million total. Sarah pulled up the documentation. They're supposed to be going to depot maintenance at Anniston, but based on the pattern, they'll get diverted, probably to Triton. Can you track the shipment? Jake asked. I can do better than that. Sarah smiled for the first time, and it was sharp. I'm the one who processes the shipping documentation. I can tell you exactly when it leaves, what route it takes, and where it's supposed to end up. And I can make sure there's a tracking device hidden in the shipment that nobody knows about. You've done this before? Jake said. It wasn't a question. Twice. Both times the shipment got diverted to a warehouse facility in San Bernardino. That's where they sanitize equipment, remove military markings, replace serial numbers, repackage it for civilian sale. Sarah's voice was matter-of-fact. I couldn't do anything about it alone, but with your team, we interdict the shipment, Diaz said. Catch them in the act. Document everything. Then we take it to someone high enough up the chain that they can't bury it. Jake was already running the operation in his head. We'll need surveillance on the warehouse, documentation of the theft, probably video evidence of the equipment being processed. And we'll need to identify everyone involved, faces, names, ranks if they're military. I have floor plans of the San Bernardino facility, Sarah said, pulling up architectural diagrams. It's a commercial warehouse, 47,000 square feet, registered to a subsidiary of Triton. Security is minimal on paper. 2 guards, basic camera system. But when I surveilled it last month, I counted at least 6 personnel and what looked like former military contractors based on their movement patterns. Jake studied the floor plans. The facility was industrial, isolated, located in a commercial district that would be mostly empty after business hours. Good for privacy, bad for approach and surveillance. You said you surveilled it alone last month? I needed to confirm the location was active. Sarah zoomed in on the building's entrance points. I didn't have the resources for a full reconnaissance. Just visual confirmation from external positions. That was insane, Hayes said flatly. You could have been spotted, could have compromised the whole investigation. I was careful. Careful doesn't matter if you're alone. Jake's command voice came back. From now on, you don't do anything operational without backup. Understood? Sarah looked like she wanted to argue, then nodded. Understood. Good. Jake pulled out his phone, started making notes. We've got 1 week to plan this. Diaz, I want full surveillance package. Cameras, mics, the works. Gator, start working on insertion and exfiltration routes. Hayes, you're on documentation. I want every piece of evidence we collect to be courtroom ready. Chain of custody, timestamps, the whole 9 yards. The team fell into operational rhythm, the easy synchronization of men who'd worked together through enough combat to function like a single organism. Sarah watched them with something like relief in her eyes, the expression of someone who'd been carrying a weight alone for too long and finally had help. What do you want me to do? She asked. Jake met her eyes. The tracking device. Can you guarantee it won't be detected? It's a modified RFID chip military grade, buried in the equipment casing. Unless they're specifically scanning for it with the right frequency, they won't find it. And even if they scan, it'll read as part of the standard equipment tagging system. Sarah's confidence was absolute. I've done this before. It works. Then your job is to make sure that shipment goes out exactly as planned. No delays, no changes that might spook them. And I want real-time tracking data. You'll feed it to us during the operation. I can do that. Sarah paused. Chief, there's something else you should know. The thermal optics in this shipment? They're in /PSQ, 20 yen VG3 systems. Latest generation. They're not even fully deployed to combat units yet. If these end up in Syria, she didn't need to finish. Everyone understood. Cutting-edge night vision technology in enemy hands meant Americans dying in the dark, killed by an advantage that was supposed to be theirs. Then we make sure they don't get there, Jake said simply. The plan came together over the next hour. Sarah would process the shipment through normal channels, plant the tracking device, and monitor for any deviations from the expected route. Jake's team would establish surveillance on the San Bernardino warehouse 48 hours before the shipment's expected arrival. Once the equipment was inside and they had visual confirmation of Triton personnel processing the theft, they'd document everything and then make the decision, interdict immediately or track further up the chain. I vote we see where it goes, Gator said. We grab the warehouse, we get the middlemen, but the people at the top, Vance and whoever's protecting him, they'll just claim ignorance. We need to connect them directly to the operation. That means letting $3 million in equipment get further from our control, Hayes countered. Every mile it travels is another chance we lose it. But if we move too soon, we get the pawns and miss the king, Diaz said. Gator's right. We need the full network, Jake considered. It was an eternal tactical dilemma. Take the certain small win or risk it for the larger victory. In his experience, going for the larger victory usually meant more variables, more chances for failure. But it also meant actually solving the problem instead of just treating symptoms. We document the warehouse operation, he decided. Get evidence of Triton processing stolen equipment. But we don't interdict there. We track the next transfer point. Find out who takes delivery after Triton sanitizes it. That's where we make the grab, when we can prove the whole chain from theft to final distribution. Sarah was already pulling up shipping manifests. Based on the last two diversions, after San Bernardino, the equipment gets transferred to a freight consolidation point in Long Beach. From there it goes international. Last time it was a shipping container to Aqaba, Jordan. From Jordan it crosses into Syria through intermediaries. Jordan's out of our jurisdiction. Hayes said, we can't operate there. We don't need to. We just need to prove the equipment leaves U.S. soil with Triton's knowledge and coordination. Jake looked at Sarah. Can you track the shipping container? Get us the bill of lading, the customs documentation? If I can access Triton's logistics database, which I haven't been able to do yet, their security is better than military systems. Sarah's frustration was evident. I've tried. I'm not a hacker. I'm just a supply clerk who's good with spreadsheets. Leave that to us, Diaz said. I know someone at Coronado who specializes in signals intelligence. Owes me a favor. I can get him to take a look at Triton's network security. Jake nodded. The pieces were coming together. It felt like mission planning. The familiar rhythm of intelligence, analysis, tactical options, contingency planning. This was what he knew, what he was good at. And for the first time since Sarah had spoken her father's name, he felt like they might actually pull this off. One more thing, Sarah said quietly. If we expose this network, if we bring down Triton and everyone protecting them, there's going to be blowback. People with stars on their shoulders are going to be implicated. Maybe people in Congress. This isn't going to be a quiet investigation that gets handled internally. Good, Gator said. Let them burn. I'm serious. Sarah's voice was harder now. I've been thinking about this for 18 months. Once we pull this thread, we can't stop pulling. And we can't predict where it ends. Careers will be destroyed. Reputations will collapse. There might be political consequences that affect all of us. Jake understood what she was really asking. Are you ready for this to consume your lives the way it's consumed mine? He looked at his team. Diaz, who'd been with him since their first deployment in Iraq. Gator, who'd saved his life in Mosul when a building collapsed. Hayes, the youngest of them, still carrying the idealism that sustained people through this work. We're ready, Jake said. Sarah's shoulders relaxed slightly. Not much, but enough that Jake could see how much tension she'd been carrying. Thank you. Don't thank us yet. We haven't done anything except listen to a briefing. Jake glanced at his watch. 1,347 hours. They'd been at this for over 2 hours. We need to break this up before someone notices SEAL Team 6 is having an extended conference with a supply specialist. From now on, communications are secure only. Sarah, you have an encrypted device? Burner phone. Picked it up with cash 6 months ago. Of course she did. Jake was starting to realize that Sarah Lockhart's paranoia wasn't paranoia at all. It was survival instinct. Good. Diaz will set up a signal group for the team. All mission communications go through there. Nothing on official channels. Nothing on personal phones. We treat this like we're operating in denied territory. Because we are, Hayes muttered, just happens to be our own country. The team dispersed with the casual body language of people who'd finished a routine range session. Sarah lingered, gathering her tablet and tried to look like she was just doing equipment inventory. When it was just her and Jake, she spoke quietly. Chief, there's one more thing. About my father. Jake waited. The last confirmed sighting was March 17th, 2021. 2 days after he disappeared, a Jordanian border patrol reported an American matching his description being transported in a convoy heading into Syria. He was alive, possibly injured, but alive. That was 3 years ago, Jake said gently. I know. Sarah's voice was steady, but Jake could hear the weight behind it. I know the odds. I know what 3 years in captivity does to people. I know he might be dead. Might have been dead the whole time, and that border patrol saw someone else. But I also know that every piece of stolen equipment that ends up in Syria is leverage. It's resources for whoever has him. And as long as this network keeps operating, there's no incentive to let him go. Jake saw the calculation now. Sarah wasn't just trying to stop a theft ring. She was trying to destroy the economic model that made her father valuable as a hostage. Cut off the money. Collapse the network, eliminate the reason to keep an American sniper alive. If we shut down Triton, if we expose his whole operation, you think it gives him a chance? Jake said, I think it removes variables from an impossible equation. And maybe that changes something. Sarah met his eyes. Or maybe I'm delusional, and my father's been dead for 3 years, and I've wasted 18 months of my life chasing ghosts. Either way, I have to see this through. You're not delusional. Jake had known enough combat to recognize the difference between desperate hope and tactical assessment. Sarah was operating on the latter. And for what it's worth, if Reaper's anything like his daughter, he's surviving. Snipers are patient. They know how to wait. Sarah's smile was brief and sad. He used to say that patience was just another word for refusing to give up. I never really understood it until he was gone. They stood in silence for a moment. The range was empty now. The heat of the day starting to fade into evening. Somewhere in the distance, the mountains turned purple with shadow. Go back to supply, Jake finally said. Process that shipment like normal. We'll handle the rest. Sarah nodded and turned to leave, then stopped. Chief, that shot you were trying to make, the 1,200-meter target. You were doing everything right. Your form, your breathing, your wind call. The only thing wrong was trusting the equipment. That a lesson your father taught you? No. Sarah glanced back. That's a lesson I learned after he disappeared. Don't trust the system. Trust the people who've earned it. She left, walking across the desert range with the same controlled movements she'd used to approach the rifle. Jake watched her go and felt the familiar weight of command settling onto his shoulders. He'd just committed his team to an unsanctioned operation against what appeared to be a well-protected criminal network with institutional backing. If they succeeded, they might save lives and expose corruption. If they failed, they'd all end up in Fort Leavenworth. His phone buzzed. Text from Diaz, signal group established. We're encrypted. Also, I asked around about Reaper. The stories are real, Jake. He was legitimate. One shot, one kill at ranges that shouldn't be possible. If his daughter's half the operator he was, we're in good hands. Jake typed back. She made a shot in one attempt that took me 40 minutes to miss. I think she's more than half. The next 6 days moved with the compressed intensity of pre-deployment preparation. Jake's team fell into old patterns, surveillance planning, equipment staging, contingency development. They were technically off-duty, using personal time for what the Navy thought was relaxation before their Syria rotation. Nobody questioned why 4 SEALs were spending their leave together. That was normal. Operators bonded. They trained even when training wasn't required. Sarah sent updates through the signal group with clinical precision. The thermal optics shipment was processed and scheduled for transport on day 7. Tracking device installed. Route confirmed. Camp Pendleton to Anniston Army Depot, with the expected diversion occurring somewhere along Interstate 10 between Phoenix and San Bernardino. Diaz's signals intelligence contact came through. Triton Global Solutions network security was good. Corporate-level firewalls, encrypted communications, multi-factor authentication. But it wasn't NSA level. The contact found a vulnerability in the logistics tracking system and created a backdoor that would give them read-only access to shipping manifests and communication logs. It's not smoking gun evidence, Diaz reported during their 3rd planning session, held in Jake's off-base apartment. But it'll tell us where the equipment's going after San Bernardino. That's what we need. Gator had acquired surveillance equipment that definitely wasn't available through official SEAL channels. For micro cameras with 72-hour battery life, parabolic microphones, a drone small enough to fit in a backpack with thermal imaging capability. Don't ask where I got it, he said. Just know we're equipped. Hayes built out the evidence documentation system. Every piece of intelligence will be logged with timestamps, GPS coordinates, and cryptographic hashing to prove it hadn't been tampered with. If this goes to court or Congress, our evidence needs to be bulletproof, he said. We get one shot at this. It has to count. On day 5, Sarah requested an in-person meeting. They gathered at a state park 30 miles from base, ostensibly for a hiking trip. The park was empty on a Wednesday afternoon. They found a trail that wound into the hills, far from any parking areas or casual visitors. Problem? Jake asked when they were safely isolated. Sarah pulled out her tablet. Not a problem. An opportunity. I was going through Triton's communication logs. The backdoor your guys set up is incredible, by the way, and I found something. She showed them an email chain. Colonel Richard Vance to an unnamed recipient, discussing the Syria merchandise and finalizing the Aqaba transfer. The language was careful, nothing explicitly incriminating, but combined with Sarah's evidence of stolen equipment, following the same route, it was another piece of the puzzle. More importantly, Sarah continued, Vance is going to be at the San Bernardino facility when our shipment arrives. The email says he's conducting a quality assessment of the latest acquisitions. Diaz whistled. We could get the head of the network on video, directly handling stolen military equipment. That's the opportunity, Sarah confirmed. But it also means higher risk. If Vance is there, security will be tighter. He'll probably bring his own people, former special operations, experienced contractors. It won't be just warehouse guards. Jake considered the tactical implications. More security meant higher chance of detection during surveillance. But it also meant evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. If they could document Colonel Richard Vance personally overseeing the processing of $3 million in stolen night vision equipment, the case became undeniable. We adjust the plan, Jake said. Gator, you're on Overwatch. Find a position with clear sight lines to the warehouse. I want eyes on every entrance, every person who goes in or out. Diaz and I will handle close surveillance. Get cameras inside if possible. Hayes, you're on communications and quick reaction. If this goes bad, we need extraction ready. What about me? Sarah asked. You stay in a safe location and monitor the tracking data. Jake said, you're the only one who can prove the chain of custody on that equipment. If something happens to you, we lose that connection. Sarah's expression hardened. With respect, Chief, I've been investigating this for 18 months. I'm not sitting on the sidelines while you do the actual operation. You're not an operator. You're a supply specialist. I'm my father's daughter. Sarah's voice was ice. I can shoot better than half your team. I know this case better than anyone. And I have more at stake than any of you. I'm not sitting in a safe house. Jake recognized the look in her eyes. He'd seen it in the mirror often enough, the absolute refusal to be protected when action was required. Arguing would be pointless. Sarah would either be part of the operation with their coordination, or she'd run her own parallel mission and create chaos. Fine, he said, but you follow orders. This is a surveillance operation, not a combat deployment. We watch, we document, we extract. Nobody engages unless there's no other option. Clear, clear. Gator shook his head. Jake, this is a mistake. We're not babysitters. We're not babysitting. We're incorporating a valuable intelligence asset into the operation. Jake's tone left no room for argument. Sarah has skills we need. More importantly, she has knowledge of the equipment and the case that we don't. She's coming. The team spent the next 2 days refining the plan. Sarah studied the warehouse facility until she could draw it from memory. Gator identified an office building 400 meters east that would provide perfect overwatch position. Diaz planned 3 different insertion routes depending on security posture. Hayes built contingency plans for everything from technical surveillance failure to active compromise. On day 7, the thermal optics shipment left Camp Pendleton at 0600 hours. Sarah sent confirmation through Signal, package mobile, tracking active, ETA to diversion point 1400 hours. Jake's team was already in San Bernardino, staged in a rented SUV that couldn't be traced back to the military. They looked like civilians, contractors maybe, or outdoor enthusiasts in hiking gear. Nobody who looked at them would see SEAL Team 6. Sarah arrived separately, driving a 10-year-old Honda Civic that she'd bought with cash specifically for this investigation. Jake was starting to understand the depth of her operational security. For 18 months, she'd been running an intelligence operation while maintaining her cover as a simple supply clerk that required discipline most trained operators didn't have. 1,347 hours. The tracking device showed the shipment deviating from the expected route to Anniston. Instead of continuing east on I-10, it turned north on I-15, heading toward San Bernardino. Exactly as Sarah had predicted. They're not even being subtle about it, Diaz muttered, watching the tracking data on his phone. Why would they be? Sarah said from the back seat. They've been doing this for years without consequences. They think they're untouchable. 1,423 hours. Gator, positioned in the office building Overwatch, reported visual contact. I've got a white Freightliner box truck, 26-footer, approaching the warehouse in the south. Could be our package. Jake keyed his radio. Confirmed. That's the vehicle signature from the transport manifest. Stay on it. The truck pulled into the warehouse facility's loading bay. 2 men emerged from inside the building. Both military-age males, fit, moving with the confidence of experienced contractors. They checked the truck's documentation, then waved it inside. The bay door closed. Package is inside the facility, Gator reported. I count 4 external security now. 2 on foot patrol, 2 in a vehicle. They're alert. Professional spacing and movement. This was higher security than Sarah's previous surveillance had noted. Vance being on site had definitely elevated their posture. Jake made the call. We go thermal. Diaz, deploy the drone. I want to see how many people are inside that building before we commit to close approach. The drone went up, a small quadcopter that looked like a civilian DJI model, but had been modified with military-grade thermal imaging. At 200 meters altitude, it was nearly invisible and silent. The feed came back to Hayes' laptop. 12 thermal signatures inside the warehouse, clustered in what looked like the central processing area based on Sarah's floor plans. That was a lot of personnel for a simple equipment transfer. This isn't just processing, Sarah said, studying the thermal display. They're conducting an inspection. Vance doesn't trust his people. He's verifying quality personally. She was right. Jake could see it in the thermal patterns. People gathered around a central point, methodical movements that suggested careful examination rather than quick handling. That's our evidence, Hayes said. If we can get visual inside that room, document Vance with the equipment, we have him. Getting visual means getting close. Diaz said, those security patrols are going to make that difficult. Jake studied the warehouse layout on Sarah's tablet. The building had windows running along the upper level, probably office spaces or storage areas. If they could get someone inside and above the main floor, they could shoot down into the processing area. There, Sarah said, pointing to an access door on the north side of the building. Fire exit, required by code to be operational, but probably not monitored as heavily as main entrances. If we can get through that door and up to the second level, we can get the camera angles we need. That's a big if, Gator said over the radio. I'm seeing regular patrols pass that door every 6 minutes. So we time between patrols, Sarah said. 6 minutes is enough to get inside and find a position. Jake looked at her. You've thought about this before. I've thought about everything before. For 18 months. Sarah met his eyes. I'm going in. I know the equipment. I know what we need to document. I can do this. Every instinct Jake had screamed against sending a 21-year-old supplies specialist into a denied facility with armed security. But every tactical assessment said she was right. She knew the case, knew the equipment, and was small enough to move through the building without the same profile as a full-grown SEAL operator. Not alone, he said. Diaz goes with you. I'm on external security. If those patrols deviate from pattern, I'll create a distraction. Hayes, you monitor communications and be ready for emergency extraction. Gator, you keep overwatch and tell us if anything changes. The team acknowledged. Jake checked his watch. 1,456 hours. The truck had been inside for 33 minutes. However long Vance's inspection took, it wouldn't last forever. They had a narrow window. 1,502 hours. Patrol pattern confirmed. 6 minutes between passes by the Northfire exit. That gave them a 5-minute margin for error. Stand by, Jake said. He moved to a position where he could see both the patrol routes and give Diaz and Sarah covering support if necessary. His SIG Sauer P226 was concealed under his jacket. Not much use in a real firefight, but enough to create chaos if extraction became necessary. 1,507 hours. Patrol clear. You've got 6 minutes. Jake's voice was calm. This was just another operation. Just another mission. The fact that it was on American soil against American criminals didn't change the fundamentals. Diaz and Sarah moved. They crossed the open ground between their position and the warehouse with the efficient movement of people who understood exposure time. 30 seconds to the door. Diaz produced a lockpick set. Technically illegal, practically essential. 20 seconds to defeat the lock. They were inside. We're in, Diaz whispered over the radio. Moving to second level. Jake watched the external security. No reaction. The patrols continued their pattern, unaware that their perimeter had just been breached. Inside the warehouse, Sarah followed Diaz through the dark service corridor. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands were steady. This was what 18 months had been building toward. Every spreadsheet analyzed, every serial number traced, every sleepless night wondering if her father was still alive. It all came down to the next 15 minutes. The second level was a catwalk system overlooking the main warehouse floor. Metal grating, industrial lighting, the smell of concrete dust and machine oil. Below them, the processing area was lit like a stage. 12 people, just as the thermal imaging had shown. And in the center, inspecting an in/PSQ 20 enhanced night vision goggle system with the careful attention of a jeweler examining diamonds, was Colonel Richard Vance. Sarah recognized him from photographs. 62 years old but fit, gray hair cut to military precision, wearing civilian clothes that probably cost more than her monthly salary. He handled the night vision equipment with familiar ease, checking the housing, testing the controls, nodding approval. Diaz was already setting up the camera, a small device no larger than a deck of cards, with a lens that could capture 4K video in low light. He positioned it between the metal grating slats, angling for the best view of the processing area. I've got Vance on camera, Diaz whispered into his radio. Clear view, good lighting. Recording now. Below, Vance said something to one of his people. Sarah couldn't make out the words, but she could see him gesturing to the equipment, pointing out features. He picked up another night vision system, examined it, then checked something on a tablet one of his people was holding. He was cataloging them, building an inventory of stolen American military equipment, like he was running a legitimate business operation. Sarah's hands clenched. This was the man. Maybe not the only one, maybe not even the most important one, but this was someone directly responsible for the theft ring. Someone who'd gotten rich while American soldiers died with degraded equipment or faced enemies with stolen advantages. Someone who might know what happened to her father. Sarah. Diaz's voice was quiet but sharp. Stay focused. We're here for evidence, not engagement. She forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The same rhythm her father had taught her for shooting. Calm your body. Calm your mind. Execute the mission. More advances, people brought equipment to the processing table. Thermal scopes, laser designators, range finders. Each piece represented thousands of dollars of stolen military property. Each piece would end up in the hands of insurgents, criminals, or whoever paid Triton's price. Jake, you seen this feed? Diaz asked. Confirmed. Jake's voice came through the radio, steady and professional. Hayes is capturing everything. This is solid evidence. Another 5 minutes and we extract. But Sarah was watching something else. One of Vance's people had brought out a laptop, and they were pulling up files. From her angle on the catwalk, she could see the screen, shipping manifests, customer lists, payment records. Diaz, she whispered, that laptop, can you get the camera closer? That's their logistical database. If we can capture those files. Too risky. We're exposed up here. We're 30 feet above them with perfect concealment. This is the evidence we need. Chain of custody from theft to final delivery. Sarah was already moving, crawling along the catwalk toward a better angle. Sarah, stop. That's an order. She ignored him. Later, she'd feel bad about that. Later, she'd acknowledge that Diaz was right, and she was letting personal investment override tactical judgment. But right now, all she could think about was that laptop containing names and locations and evidence that could break this network wide open. The catwalk was old metal, installed decades ago when the building was constructed. It creaked slightly as Sarah shifted her weight. Not loud, barely audible over the sound of Vance and his people talking below, but loud enough. One of the security contractors looked up, former military for sure. His reaction time was too good, his threat assessment too automatic. His eyes swept the catwalk, searching for the source of sound. Sarah froze. Diaz went motionless behind her. If they didn't move, didn't breathe, maybe the contractor would decide it was building settling or wind, or the contractor's hand moved to his waistband, where a concealed weapon would be. Contact, Diaz whispered into his radio. We're compromised. Everything happened fast. The contractor shouted a warning. Vance looked up. Other security personnel reached for weapons. Diaz grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her back toward the exit corridor. Below them, chaos erupted. Someone killed the main lights. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Sarah could hear boots on metal stairs. Security racing toward the second level. Extract now. Jake's voice came through the radio with absolute command. All personnel, emergency extract. Diaz was already moving, pulling Sarah toward a fire exit they'd entered through. But Sarah could hear footsteps ahead of them. Security had split up, one team going up the main stairs while another circled to cut off their escape route. We're blocked, Diaz said. Can't go back the way we came. Sarah's mind raced through the floor plan she'd memorized. There was another exit, a loading dock on the west side, ground level. If they could get down there before security locked down the building. This way, she pulled Diaz in the opposite direction, toward a service ladder that led to the main floor. It would put them in the open, exposed, but it was movement, and movement was survival. They went down the ladder fast. Sarah's hands barely touched the rungs, control falling more than climbing. The warehouse floor was a maze of pallets and equipment crates. They used the cover, moving between obstacles, heading for the west loading dock. Behind them, security was coordinating. Sarah could hear radio chatter, professional communication. These weren't amateurs. They were hunting with tactical precision. Diaz had his weapon out, a Glock 19, compact and deadly. Stay behind me. If shooting starts, you run. Understand? Sarah nodded, but she'd already drawn her own sidearm. A SIG P365 that she'd purchased legally and trained with illegally at ranges where nobody asked questions. Her father had taught her that being armed wasn't enough. You had to be competent, practiced, ready to use it if the moment came. She'd never shot at a person before, never even pointed a weapon at another human being. All her training had been against paper and steel. Please don't let the first time be tonight. They reached the loading dock. The bay door was closed, but there was a personnel exit beside it. Diaz checked the door, locked from the inside. Thank God, not from the outside. He hit the crash bar and alarms. Loud, piercing, the sound of every security protocol activating at once. So much for stealth, Diaz muttered. Run. They burst out into the night. The warehouse exterior was lit by sodium vapor lamps that turned everything orange. Sarah could see their extraction vehicle 200 meters away, Hayes behind the wheel with the engine already running. Behind them, the personnel door slammed open. Security contractors poured out, weapons drawn, shouting for them to stop. Contact rear. Diaz spun, firing 3 rounds. Not at the contractors, above their heads, suppressing fire to make them take cover. It worked. The contractors dug behind building cover, giving Diaz and Sarah precious seconds. They ran. Sarah's lungs burned. 200 meters felt like 2 miles. She could hear footsteps behind them, more shouting. Someone fired a shot that cracked past her head. Actual live fire. This was actually happening. People were trying to kill her. The SUV was accelerating toward them. Hayes had seen them, was closing the distance. 100 meters. 75. Gator, we need suppression. Jake's voice over the radio, tight with controlled urgency. From the office building Overwatch, Gator had a decision to make. Firing on American civilians, even armed contractors, was a line that once crossed couldn't be uncrossed. Courts-martial, prison, the end of everything. But Sarah and Diaz were about to die. Gator made his choice. The shot came from 400 meters out, fired for his MK-13 Mod 7 sniper rifle. It hit the pavement 2 feet in front of the lead contractor, kicking up a spray of concrete chips. The message was clear. Next one goes through you. The contractors scattered. It was reflex. When someone starts shooting at you with precision from long range, you take cover first and think second. That gave Sarah and Diaz the time they needed. The SUV screeched to a stop. The rear door flew open. Sarah dove inside, Diaz right behind her. Hayes was accelerating before the door even closed, tires screaming, the vehicle fishtailing as he whipped through a turn and onto the main road. Everyone intact? Jake demanded. He was in the passenger seat, twisted around to check them. We're good, Diaz confirmed, breathing hard. Compromised but intact. We got video. We got everything, Hayes said. Camera feed uploaded to secure cloud storage in real time. Even if they grabbed you, we'd still have the evidence. Sarah sat in the back seat, shaking with adrenaline dump. Her hands were trembling now that the immediate danger had passed. She'd been shot at. She'd almost died. 18 months of careful investigation had just turned into a firefight in a warehouse parking lot. I'm sorry, she said. The laptop. I thought if we could just get the files. You broke position and compromised operation, Jake said. His voice was hard. Diaz gave you an order and you ignored it. That almost got both of you killed. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't matter if you're dead. Jake turned back to face forward. We'll debrief later. Right now we need distance and we need to dump this vehicle. Gator, status? Extracting from Overwatch now. Gator's voice came through the radio. No pursuit on my position. I'm mobile in 3 minutes. They drove in silence, following a pre-planned extraction route that took them through surface streets and residential areas where they blend with normal traffic. 20 minutes later, they switched vehicles at a shopping center parking lot. The hot SUV left behind, now traveling in Gator's civilian pickup truck that had no connection to the operation. Only then did Jake allow them to breathe. Hayes, evidence status? We got 23 minutes of 4K video, Hayes reported, laptop open, reviewing the footage. Clear documentation of Colonel Richard Vance personally inspecting stolen military equipment. Serial numbers are visible on multiple items. We've got his face, his voice, his hands on the equipment. Combined with Sarah's chain of custody documentation, this is prosecutable. Is it enough? Sarah asked. Her voice was steadier now. We didn't get the laptop files. We didn't get the full customer list. We got Vance, Jake said. That's what matters. He's the link between the thefts and Triton. Once we have him, we can flip him. Get him to testify about the larger network in exchange for reduced charges. Sarah wasn't sure. Vance didn't strike her as the type to flip easily. He'd spent 26 years in the Marine Corps, built a successful criminal enterprise, and had enough institutional protection to operate for years without consequence. Men like that didn't break under pressure. But maybe they didn't need him to talk. Maybe the evidence would speak for itself. What about the shooting? Diaz asked. Gator put rounds downrange at American civilians. That's going to have consequences. Warning shots, Gator said over radio. Didn't hit anyone. Didn't even aim at anyone. Just convinced them that pursuit was a bad idea. Still going to be hard to explain if this goes wrong. Hayes said, then we make sure it doesn't go wrong. Jake pulled out his phone. We got evidence of active theft by a retired Marine colonel. We got documentation that equipment stolen from U.S. military bases is being processed for international sale. We've got enough to force a real investigation. Question is, who do we take it to? That was a question Sarah had been asking herself for 18 months. Who could you trust when the corruption went high enough to have institutional protection? Who had enough authority to act and enough independence to not be compromised? Inspector General? Diaz suggested. IG reports up through DOD. If the conspiracy goes high enough in the Pentagon, they'll bury it. Jake shook his head. FBI. Hayes offered. FBI has jurisdiction, but they'll want to run their own investigation. Could take months. And we just conducted an illegal surveillance operation that included armed confrontation. We'd all be arrested while they sorted it out. Sarah had been thinking about this problem for a long time. Congressional oversight, House Armed Services Committee, specifically the Subcommittee on Intelligence and Special Operations. They have investigative authority independent of DOD. And there's a congressman, Representative Catherine Morrison, California 42nd District. She's former Army JAG, served in Iraq. She's been vocal about military accountability and defense contractor corruption. Jake looked at her. You've researched this. I've researched everything. Sarah pulled up a file on her phone. Morrison introduced legislation last year to increase oversight on equipment disposal and require independent audits of defense contractor supply chains. It didn't pass. Got killed in committee by representatives with defense industry connections. But it means she's already focused on this issue. And she has a reputation for not backing down when she thinks something's wrong. So we go to Congresswoman, Diaz said slowly. Just walk into her office with a thumb drive full of evidence and hope she doesn't have us arrested for conducting vigilante operations? We don't walk in, Sarah said. We make contact through her staff first. Provide enough evidence to prove we're legitimate. Set up a secure meeting. And we make sure we have leverage, copies of everything, distributed to multiple locations, with dead man switches in case something happens to us. It was paranoid. It was also smart. Jake found himself impressed again with how thoroughly Sarah had thought through every contingency. All right, he said. Sarah, you draft the initial contact message. Include just enough evidence to prove legitimacy, but not so much that it could be intercepted and suppressed. Hayes, you work on securing our evidence, multiple copies, distributed storage, encryption. Diaz and Gator, start working on our testimony. We need to document everything we did, why we did it, and what we found. Make it airtight. The team acknowledged and got to work. They were back at Jake's apartment now, turned into a makeshift operation center. Laptops open, files spread across the dining table, the organized chaos of people working a complex problem. Sarah sat apart from the group for a moment, staring at her phone. She had new messages, work-related stuff from her supply unit, asking where she was. She called in sick that morning, using one of her carefully hoarded leave days. How long before someone noticed she wasn't just sick, but involved in something far outside her job description? Her phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number. Her stomach clenched. Unknown numbers were never good. The message read, "We know who you are, Sarah Lockhart. We know what you're doing. Stop now or your father dies." She stopped breathing. Read it again. The words didn't change. Jake. Her voice came out strangled. "We have a problem." She showed him the message. His expression went hard. "They know about your father," Jake said quietly, "which means they've known about you for a while. This isn't a bluff." Sarah's mind was racing. 18 months of careful operational security, and somehow they'd identified her. How? When? What had she missed? "The warehouse," she said. "They got a clear look at my face. Vance or his people could have run facial recognition. If they have access to military databases, they'd have your personnel file, your family history, everything." Diaz swore. "They've probably been monitoring you for months, letting you investigate because you were one person, no threat. But now that we're involved, now that there's video evidence, they're escalating." Hayes finished. "From surveillance to active threats." Jake took the phone, examined the message. "This came through 15 minutes ago, right after we extracted from the warehouse. They're fast. What do we do?" Sarah's voice was steady, but Jake could see the fear in her eyes. For 18 months, she'd been chasing information about her father. Now someone was claiming to have him, using him as leverage. It could be a lie, a psychological operation designed to make her stop investigating. But if it wasn't, if her father really was alive, held by the same network she'd been tracking, then every move she made could get him killed. "We don't stop," Jake said firmly. "This is a pressure tactic. They want you scared and paralyzed. We don't give them that. They have my father. Maybe they're claiming to have information about your father because they know that's your weakness." Jake handed back the phone. Either way, stopping the investigation doesn't help him. If they have him, he's leverage. If they don't, this is just a bluff. The only way forward is to burn down their network completely, make them too busy protecting themselves to threaten anyone. Sarah wanted to believe that, wanted to trust that aggressive action was the right response. But what if she was wrong? What if pushing forward got her father killed? Gator looked up from his laptop. There's another angle. If they're threatening her father, they're admitting he's alive. That's information. For 3 years, the official line has been that Marcus Lockhart died in Syria. But this message implies he's a hostage. That changes things. "It means there's something to rescue," Diaz said. "We've been treating this like an investigation. But if Sarah's father is alive and being held, then this becomes a recovery operation." Jake finished. He looked at Sarah. "Are you ready for that? Because recovery operations in denied territory are different than evidence gathering. They're higher risk, more complex, and they require resources we don't currently have." Sarah met his eyes. "If there's a chance my father's alive, I'm ready for anything." Jake nodded slowly. The mission had just evolved. What started as documenting a theft ring had become something larger, a conspiracy investigation combined with a hostage recovery. It was insane. It was beyond their authority. It was probably illegal. It was also the right thing to do. "All right," Jake said. "We move forward on 2 tracks. Track 1. We make contact with Representative Morrison, provide the evidence we've collected, force a congressional investigation. That puts public pressure on the network, makes it harder for them to operate quietly. Track 2. We use our intelligence to locate Sarah's father. If he's alive and being held, we find him, and then we bring him home. Track 2 is going to require significant resources." Hayes pointed out, "If he's in Syria, we're talking about international operation. Insertion, intelligence, extraction. That's not something Force SEALs and a supply specialist can do alone. Then we get help." Jake was already thinking through contacts, people who owed favors, operators who bend rules for the right cause. "I know people, former teammates who've gone private sector, contractors with capabilities. We can put together a team." "That'll take time," Diaz said. "So we buy time." Sarah, respond to that message. "Tell them you're willing to negotiate. Keep them talking while we work the problem." Sarah's hand shook slightly as she typed out a response. "How do I know he's alive?" The reply came back within 60 seconds. A photograph. Marcus Lockhart, looking older and thinner than Sarah's last memory of him, but unmistakably alive. He was holding a newspaper. Yesterday's date visible. Proof of life. Sarah's breath caught. 3 years of wondering. And here was the answer. Her father was alive. "They're serious," she whispered. "Which means they're vulnerable," Jake countered. "Hostages are leverage only if the hostage taker believes you'll negotiate. And negotiations take time. Time we'll use to find him." Sarah sent another message. "What do you want?" The response. "All evidence you've collected. All copies. Complete destruction with verification. You have 48 hours. If you involve authorities, he dies. If you miss the deadline, he dies. If you try anything clever, he dies. We'll send delivery instructions tomorrow." Jake read over Sarah's shoulder. 48 hours. That's our timeline. "That's impossible," Hayes said. "Locating a hostage in Syria, planning an extraction, executing it. That takes weeks of preparation minimum. Then we work fast." Jake stood, moving into command mode. "Hayes, you focus on the congressional contact. Get our evidence package to Morrison's office tonight, if possible. Even if we end up trading the evidence to get Lockhart back, we need someone outside our circle to have copies. Insurance policy. Diaz, start reaching out to contacts. I want intelligence on Syria, specifically regions where an American hostage could be held without attracting attention. Gator, weapons, and equipment. If we're going to denied territory, we need gear that's sterile, can't be traced back to the U.S. military. What about me? Sarah asked. You're on your father. Everything you know about his last mission, his contacts in Syria, people he worked with. Build me a target package. Who'd have reason to grab him? Who'd have capability to hold him for 3 years, where they'd keep him? Jake paused. And you keep talking to them. String them along. Make them think you're complying while we plan the real response. The team split up, each member focused on their assigned task. The apartment transformed into a tactical operations center, laptops running intelligence queries, phones connecting to contacts across the military and contractor world, maps of Syria being marked and analyzed. Sarah worked on her father's profile, trying to remember everything he'd told her about his last deployment. He'd been in Syria as part of a joint task force targeting high-value ISIS remnants. But his final email suggested he'd stumbled onto something else, the weapons trafficking that would eventually become her 18-month investigation. Who would have grabbed him? Someone with resources to keep an American prisoner for 3 years. Someone with connections to the stolen equipment network. Someone who saw value in keeping a legendary sniper alive rather than killing him. The pieces started connecting. Triton Global Solutions operated in Syria through security contracts. Richard Vance had been in Syria in 2021. The timeline matched. Jake, Sarah said, what if Triton didn't just steal equipment? What if they grabbed my father when he got too close to their operation? Kept him alive because a captured American sniper is valuable, either for prisoner exchange, intelligence, or just insurance against exposure? Jake considered it. It fits. Vance would have had opportunity and motive. And keeping Lockhart alive gives him leverage against anyone who gets too close to their operation. Like you. So, if we burn down Triton, if we expose Vance and his network completely, Sarah saw it now. He loses his protection. His political connections won't help him if he's on video handling stolen equipment. And if he goes down, everyone connected to him starts making deals to save themselves. Someone flips and tells us where your father is. Diaz finished. We don't have to mount a rescue operation in Syria. We make them bring him back as part of their cooperation agreement. It was elegant. It was optimistic. It relied on a lot of variables breaking their way. But it was a plan. All right, Jake said. Then we accelerate track one. We don't wait for a careful congressional outreach. We go public. Release the evidence to media, congressional oversight, Inspector General, FBI, everyone simultaneously. Create so much pressure that Triton and Vance can't contain it. Force them to either cut their losses or go down fighting. That exposes all of us, Hayes warned. Our illegal surveillance, Gator's shooting, everything we've done outside official channels. We'll be arrested. Probably, Jake agreed. But if the evidence is strong enough, if the conspiracy is big enough, we become witnesses instead of criminals. Especially if we can prove they were holding an American hostage. Sarah pulled up her father's photograph again, staring at his face. 3 years. He'd survived 3 years as a prisoner because he was strong, because he was patient, because he refused to give up, just like he taught her. Do it, she said. Release everything. Burn it all down. The evidence went out at 200 hours. Hayes had built a distribution system that was beautiful in its simplicity. Encrypted files uploaded to a secure server, with anonymous links sent to 47 different recipients simultaneously. House Armed Services Committee, Senate Intelligence Committee, Department of Defense Inspector General, FBI Criminal Investigation Division, The Washington Post, The New York Times, ProPublica, every major oversight body and investigative journalism outlet that might have the resources and independence to act on what they received. The files contained everything. Sarah's 18 months of documentation tracking stolen equipment, video footage of Colonel Richard Vance handling military hardware at the San Bernardino warehouse, chain of custody evidence, financial analysis showing $47 million in stolen gear, forensic connections to 89 American combat deaths, and the final piece, proof of life from Marcus Reaper Lockhart, held hostage for 3 years by the same network responsible for the thefts. It's done, Hayes said, hitting the final send command. No taking it back now. Jake felt the weight of it. They just ended their military careers, possibly ensured their own criminal prosecution. definitely made enemies of people with significant power and resources. But they'd also lit a fuse that couldn't be extinguished. By dawn, the story was breaking. The Washington Post published first a careful, sourced article that didn't make direct accusations, but laid out the evidence in devastating detail. Within 2 hours, CNN picked it up. By 0900, it was the lead story on every major news network. Representative Catherine Morrison held a press conference at 1100, announcing immediate congressional hearings and demanding DOD cooperation. The FBI released a statement confirming an active investigation. The Secretary of Defense promised full accountability. And somewhere, Colonel Richard Vance and his network were watching their world collapse. Jake's phone started ringing at 1134, Naval Criminal Investigative Service. He didn't answer. There would be time for that later. Right now, he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. It came at 1347. A text message to Sarah's phone from the same unknown number. "You just killed him." Sarah showed it to Jake, her face pale. What if they're right? What if going public? They're bluffing, Jake said with more confidence than he felt. Your father's more valuable alive than dead, especially now that everyone knows he's a hostage. Killing him serves no purpose. But Sarah wasn't convinced. She just bet her father's life on a tactical gamble. If she was wrong. The next message came through at 1401. You want him back? Come get him. 34.8333 degrees north, 38.7833 degrees east. You have 24 hours. Jake pulled up the coordinates. Eastern Syria, near the Iraqi border. A region that was technically under Kurdish control, but practically lawless. Perfect place to hold a hostage. Or a perfect place for an ambush. It's a trap, Diaz said immediately. Of course it's a trap, Jake agreed. Question is, do we sprint anyway? We can't mount an operation in Syria in 24 hours. Hayes said. It's not possible. But Sarah was already standing, gathering her gear. Then I go alone. This is my fault. My father. My responsibility. You're not going alone, Jake said. You're not going at all. Not like this. Not walking into an obvious ambush with no support. Then what do we do? Just let them kill him? Jake's phone rang again. This time he answered. Brennan. Chief Brennan. This is Special Agent Linda Torres, FBI. I need you and your team to come in for questioning immediately regarding. Agent Torres, Jake interrupted. I'll cooperate fully. But first I need to tell you about coordinates in Syria where an American hostage is being held. If you want the full story, if you want everyone involved in this conspiracy, you'll help me get Marcus Lockhart back. Otherwise, you'll get partial cooperation and partial justice. Your choice. The silence on the other end lasted 5 seconds. Then, tell me everything. 6 hours later, Jake and his team were in an FBI conference room, briefing a joint task force that included FBI, DOD, CIA, and State Department representatives. The evidence was spread across multiple screens. The case was laid out in forensic detail, and a plan was taking shape to recover Marcus Lockhart. It wouldn't be Jake's team going in. Too much liability, too many legal complications. But there were resources being marshaled, Delta Force operators, intelligence support, diplomatic coordination with Kurdish forces in the region. Sarah wasn't cleared to know the details. She wasn't military, wasn't law enforcement, wasn't authorized for any of this. But Jake made sure she understood they were going to get her father back. The rescue operation launched at 0300 the following morning. Sarah waited in the FBI conference room, drinking bad coffee and wearing a path in the carpet with her pacing. Jake sat with her, officially under arrest, but practically a cooperating witness. They both made statements. They both probably faced charges eventually. But right now, all that mattered was the radio traffic coming through encrypted channels. The operation in Syria, unfolding in real time 8,000 miles away. At 0512, the call came through. Package secure. One American male, positive ID on Marcus Lockhart. Medical evac in progress. He's alive. Sarah's legs gave out. Jake caught her before she hit the floor. She was crying. The first time he'd seen her cry in all of this. Relief and exhaustion, and 3 years of grief finally releasing. Her father was coming home. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood on the pier at Naval Base San Diego, watching the sunrise paint the ocean gold and crimson. Marcus Lockhart stood beside her, still thin from captivity, but growing stronger every day. The investigation was ongoing. Colonel Vance and 17 others had been arrested, with more indictments expected. The stolen equipment network had been dismantled. Congressional hearings were scheduled, and Sarah had been offered a position with the Defense Criminal Investigative Service. Not as a supply clerk, as an investigator. Your mother would be proud, Marcus said quietly. I'm proud. I almost got you killed, Sarah said. You got me home. Marcus put his arm around her shoulders. That's all that matters. Jake approached, accompanied by Diaz, Gator, and Hayes. The SEAL team had been officially reprimanded, but not court-martialed. Their testimony was too valuable, their actions too clearly motivated by legitimate concerns. They'd gotten lucky. Specialist Lockhart, Jake said formally, then smiled. Or should I say, Special Agent Lockhart? Still deciding, Sarah said. Part of me thinks I should become an instructor, teach marksmanship, help the next generation. The world needs good teachers, Marcus said. But it also needs people willing to break the rules when the rules are wrong. You showed me that. Showed everyone that. The sun cleared the horizon, brilliant and warm. A new day. A second chance. Justice, imperfect but real. Sarah looked at her father, then at the team who'd risked everything to help her. I think I can do both. Teach, serve, fight when necessary. But I'm done chasing ghosts. Good, Jake said. Because we got enough ghosts for one lifetime. They stood together, watching the sunrise, the pier solid beneath their feet. The mission was over. The future was uncertain. But they were alive, they were free, and they'd made a difference. Sometimes that was enough.